Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of your show. This is your host, Keith Doherty. Today our special guest is real estate broker Barry Burnett, CEO of Burnett Realty, based out of Burbank, California. Now, since 1973, Barry Burnett has served as a leading real estate advisor, helping clients across the U.S. and internationally to build wealth and the life and legacy they desire. Barry's been a full-service realtor for 43 years. He's personally closed over 4,000 real estate transactions for his clients and partners. He's conducted business in numerous states. He's done from residential sales and development to industrial and commercial sales and development, rehabbing, repositioning, investor coordination, and all points in between. He's also taught at real estate at universities in several states, and he's served as an expert witness in the federal Los Angeles and Southern California court systems. And he's also managed major transactions by extremely wealthy clients, as well as helping beginning investors to build their holdings and protect them step by step. So Barry, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate being on, Keith.
And Barry, if we could start, what kind of led you into real estate? Was it something that you knew you always wanted to do, or did you kind of maybe just stumble into it?
It was a complete and total right turn from the path that I had anticipated. I was a student at UCLA, chemistry major with pretty much a guarantee to going to UCLA medical school. And at 19, as a second semester junior, I realized that I really wanted to get married, and I didn't want my wife to have to support me through medical school. So I started looking at the options, and I'd been getting unsolicited offers to do stuff from the time I was about 16. So it was all high-paid stuff, but it didn't require a doctorate, let alone a master's or even college degree. And I thought, wow, let me look at what the options are. And I realized that in real estate, with an extremely small amount of investment, an individual who is prepared in his heart to be a servant can start off with very little investment and control a tremendous amount of inventory and opportunity for people or for institutions or for whatever. I personally have never chosen to serve institutional investors or institutions. I really only deal with individuals. But that's how I realized it. If I've got an unlimited opportunity, I'm going into real estate. So at 19, I started.
Excellent. And I think it's pretty important what you said there to point out to our listeners that, and it's a key factor I like to look at, especially with the people we bring on the show, is that you talked about, necessarily not focusing on you and building what you needed. You were looking at your own needs for your family, but I think you made a key point there when you talked about you wanted to serve other people and help them kind of achieve what they wanted to achieve.
Well, I've always believed that. I'm just a servant, albeit a very well-paid servant, but I'm just a servant.
Absolutely. So what personal attributes, traits, or qualities do you think have most contributed to your success, and how do you think you've developed these?
Well, Keith, that's an all-encompassing question. I'm an individual of great faith in a loving God who has commissioned me to represent him. And in doing that, I have to focus on what's really important. And what's really important is to love one another and treat others as more important than myself. To the extent that I do that, I'm a better servant. To the extent that I don't, I just sort of mess up and flounder.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say when you follow the path that you've been destined to have, that things come your way versus when you say, oh, I'm going to make my decisions and do things on my own. Like you said, you might fall and flounder. So it's interesting, based upon all the success and everything that you've done throughout your career, that's kind of been your primary message to serve other people and obviously treat people the way you want to be treated and take care of their needs.
Well, you're right there, Keith. I've always I discovered almost immediately that to the extent that it's about me, my enthusiasm is going to get people interested, but it's not necessarily right for them. In my first year, I lost one half of the escrows I put into transactions I put into escrow because I had sold as opposed to counseled or assisted and coordinated. And when my enthusiasm and my vision for someone else's benefit and welfare wasn't what was right for them, the transactions rightfully unraveled. I still closed a tremendous amount of business, but I did it wrong. So everything changed after I did my analysis of my first year's production. And I realized, it has nothing to do with me. If I'm serving correctly, then I'm going to be listening a great deal more and finding out how to meet people's needs.
So do you feel that, kind of, because like you said, your enthusiasm might attract people to certain things, but so what's the best way you feel that you can kind of serve others? You kind of said the listening, so is it more of a taking a subservient role, kind of stepping back, maybe asking more questions and pulling out more of trying to understand what that person wants to achieve so that you can then, fulfill, or help them, find that path?
Okay, let's modify that just a little bit. You said subservient role, and I believe that it's important to serve, but to serve as a surrogate, sometimes you have to draw people forward or lead them into hearing what they're saying. So sometimes you repeat back what somebody tells you and ask them if they agree with that and if that's what they really meant, because that may be totally different from the way they were seeing it in their mind's eye. So to be a servant, you have to kind of look around the edges and look around the corners. In my career, I've had the privilege of training somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 agents. And there's only one message that I can effectively teach, and it's extremely, extremely brief. And all of the training comes down to this one thing. Find a need, fill the need. I'm less interested in somebody's wants. I'm extremely interested in their legitimate needs. And if their legitimate need matches my ability to coordinate and assist effectively and efficiently, then I want to fill their need. And I've been fairly successful at it.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's pretty powerful. So what, now obviously, given, 43 years of that you've had, I'm sure it hasn't been all smooth sailing throughout that entire time. So maybe what are some major adversities and trials that you've had to overcome to keep moving forward and keep, building and achieving your goals?
Oh, I wish you could have just heard me laugh at myself. Keith, I've had a blast in my years, and I have done a lot of extraordinary things. There are others in our field that absolutely daunt me when I look at their triumphs and successes and the amount of things that they accomplish. But Keith, I've been rich and I've been broke 6 times, and I've never been poor. To me, poor says, I don't really think I can do it, so I'm not going to try. Well, rich and poor are both opposite sides of the same coin. My efforts may reward me at times if I'm focused and if I'm being a good servant. And then on the other hand, I've been embezzled a number of times for multi-million dollars, and that's pretty awkward. You can't stop trusting people, but I have shifted, and now the only one that I will partner with, where I'm not the sole managing partner, is my wife, and she's the boss anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So what, and you've kind of alluded to it, and I kind of have a feeling of where you're going to take this, but just for the sake of our listeners to kind of answer this is, what kept you going? Like you said, you could have chosen to be poor. You could have just maybe gone back into a different career. That, what kept you going? Why didn't you give up, and why did you always keep pushing forward?
Okay, I'll give you two examples. One, the evening before my 30th birthday, one of my partners called to wish me a happy birthday, and oh, by the way, you're out of the company. I was stunned. Out of the company? How can you do that? I'm a full partner. There are three of us, and we built this partnership corporation into a really strong machine. He said, well, no, I'm just going to tell you, you're out. He said, I've moved all of the assets to a subordinate company. I've bankrupted the parent company. I've bankrupted the second company. I've moved all the assets, three corporations. There's no bankruptcy court in the land that could possibly reamass the real estate and the holdings in time before I can get rid of it. So you're just out. Okay. That was $11 million. The next morning I had $4,300 to start life over again. I was married with 7-year-old twins, and the next morning we looked at each other and said, okay, let's start over. And we did. And 4 weeks later, I had 27 houses coming out of the ground and was in the process of selling them so that we could get housing for people. When my partner took my money, he didn't take my heart. He didn't take my right to serve. He didn't take my contacts. He didn't take my emotions. He just stole money. You know, that's horrible of him, but if I gave myself away for that cheap, well, that would have been a shame. So I started again.
Yeah, I think it's pretty powerful what you said there is that, you know, and I think everybody's faced adversity and you've faced obstacles in your career and in your life, but you have to really look at, and I think what Barry pointed out here is very important, that he looked at what he still had, right? And this might be, you know, it's a mindset thing. So don't look at what you lost, which he said, you know, $11 million was stripped away. Look at what you still had. He still had his heart. He still had all his desires. He still had his skill set. He had his family. He had nothing left but to, okay, we just got to make this happen. And he tapped into, you know, the gratitude of what I still have and what I can still do versus going to a, you know, proverbial pity party and worrying about it. You focused on what you had and you continued and you built right back up. So I think that speaks volumes for the mindset that you had, and you realized that, you know, I have all this, I have the capability. I'm not going to just, you know, lay down. I'm not going to roll over. I'm going to just stand up, brush myself off, and keep moving forward.
Well, Keith, I've never met a man or a woman who hasn't faced extraordinary adversity. And I applaud the ones that face it with courage, and I applaud the ones that repent of their fears. Because while we have breath and life, we have the opportunity to progress. We have the right to choose. In fact, it's more than a right to choose. We have the responsibility to choose. I mentioned there were two, if you don't mind, I mentioned there were two examples. The second example, I think, is probably a little bit more of where I live. 12 years ago, I had a motorcycle accident. I was out looking at real estate, and sometimes the best way to see real estate is without looking through a rooftop or a car door, car window. So I was out looking at real estate in Pasadena, California on my motorcycle, and right below the Rose Bowl, there's a magnificent, very enigmatic bridge that has spectacular arches right where the Rose Parade begins. And I was just going to cross that bridge at sunset because, you know, I'm a romantic at heart, and I just wanted to see that bridge at sunset. And I get out towards the bridge, and somebody's transmission fluid had the transmission had erupted right there in the middle of a small turn. And I hit the transmission fluid at 30 miles an hour and went into the guardrail and left my right leg 250 yards behind me. I actually had time for two things that I said out loud. One was, Lord, okay, see you in a second. And then the next one coming off of the guardrail was, well, that ain't going to grow back. So I pulled down into the middle. I was still up, And at that point, to get run over on the motorcycle would have just been rude. So I pulled into the middle of the bridge. I set the bike down, pulled out my cell phone, dialed 911 and put it aside, grabbed my belt and set my tourniquet. And I was very fortunate. I was enormously fortunate that the Lord gave me the tenacity to stay with it and keep the tourniquet held. Well, it's been 12 years. And in the operating theater, when they were cleaning up from the accident, it's hard to keep an operating theater clean. So what happened to me was I got the MRSA, the MRSA, the flesh-eating disease, but it didn't go into my tissue. It went to my bone marrow. So over the next 2 years, the bone kept dying off, and they had to keep cutting. And so it went from the middle of my shin to it's now about 4.5 inches above my knee joint. And I can guarantee you this: you don't want to get into a foot race with a one-legged realtor, because I'll win every time.
You'll win every time. Wow, that's an amazing story that, like the wherewithal to be able to, that your mind just didn't go into shock and that you didn't pass out, that you were able to, probably because if you weren't able to tourniquet that, I mean, who knows where, if we'd even be having this conversation right now. So that's a true blessing that you were able to pull through that.
Well, let me give you an homage to the realities of being a Boy Scout. Boy Scouts of America prepared and trained me from the age of 8 to the age of 18 to be prepared. And be prepared is the Boy Scout motto, and I was. I had been the kid that you could put out in the desert with a spork and a wax-covered kitchen match and say, be here at 1700 Sunday, and I'd go off with a smile. So I was prepared for the trouble. Everybody needs to be prepared because life has troubles. It comes in different shapes and sizes. But again, you have to make the choice. If I had chosen to say, oh, woe is me, I'm in terrible shape, then yes, absolutely would have died. There's not a possibility I could have lived through that. But I made choices, and everybody has to make those choices. At some point, it may be any level of catastrophe in their lives, but they can still make the choice to carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty powerful, like you said, and I think it goes back to every point that you've kind of made with that, the mindset. The obstacle came, you got in the right frame of mind, and you chose to move through it no matter what it was, no matter how hard it was. You looked for the positive, and you moved through it, and you came out on the other side.
Well, so, you and I, we know people who have it much worse than we do. So I look at myself, okay, right, I've got an extraordinary prosthetic leg, and to me, right at this point, it's extremely inconvenient, but that's all it is. It's a transportation issue. So I still serve families. I still provide benefits, and I'm still taking care of my family. Now I've got 5 beautiful grandkids, 3 boys and 2 girls, and they're all 7 and under. So I'm having a blast.
Yeah. Excellent. So kind of, looking forward a little bit, what do you see your vision for the way your business is going to grow, say, over the next 5 years or so?
It goes back to find a need, fill the need. I wake up every day as if I'm unemployed until I find somebody's need or address somebody's need that I'm already aware of. And when I do that, I don't have to worry about whether my plate's full or empty. It's always full. I'm always looking to solve something that somebody's laid in front of me. So in the real estate business, people have to prospect. I don't prospect. I look for needs, and I don't care where I find them if they're authentic. And if I can coordinate with that particular individual or family, then I'm the guy. So over the next 5 years, that's what I plan to do. In fact, I'm 43 years into it. I only have 17 more years to get my 60-year pin. Then I'm out of here. Then you'll have to deal with my grandkids.
Yeah. So what do you feel, now I'm pretty much from what you've said, you're probably going to answer this already with what you've said, but for the sake of the listeners to kind of clarify, what do you feel is the best way that you market yourself, as a real estate professional for continuous growth? And obviously sounds like, from what you've said is you don't necessarily need to market when you're trying to find those needs. It kind of just, things are attracted to you and you just take care of people's needs and just keep moving forward.
Well, okay, but let's qualify that. You can't find people's needs unless you are where people are. And no one is going to volunteer their needs unless you're asking authentic questions. If you're just giving them the perfunctory, hey, how you doing? Then they're going to shake your hand and that's that. But if the questions are authentic and if the care and concern is legitimate, then people will open up what they need and you can decide whether you're the right person to solve it. When I do, we have stuff to do, and I've got responsibilities. If I accept somebody's need as something I can fulfill, then I have a responsibility. So you can't be a secret agent. You have to be where people are, and you have to be asking questions. And it doesn't matter where it is, whether you're in the lunch line or calling Uber or standing at the airport.
So with your business that you have now, obviously you do a lot of advisory stuff. You act in the consultant role. You do the expert witness type stuff. Do you still act in the standard capacity as people would look at an agent, buying and selling real estate and helping people find homes and things of that nature? Constantly,
daily. I still show properties, office buildings, industrial parks, condos, single-family homes. I still show apartment buildings. I love it because those will fulfill people's needs. Yes, I do that.
So what do you think, because I think there's sometimes a misconception or there's myths out there when people, look at real estate agents. So what do you think the biggest misconception or myth that people have about working with a real estate agent is?
Well, people are people, Keith. If they have a trust, if the trust is earned, then there are very few misconceptions. Unfortunately, many times there isn't a sense that there is a trust. And when that occurs, the misconception is that the real estate agent is trying to be self-serving or looking after the almighty dollar. And unfortunately, people are people, and some of them are. And that limits their ability to serve. If someone finds that kind of agent, they should be looking for a totally different mindset, a totally different agent. But when you walk into an open house, for example, you're out kicking tires and you're looking around in Florida and you're wandering to look at property, you want to know that the agent is going to allow you to see what you see and then ask and respond to authentic questions that have to do with you, not to do with the agent. So if you find that, then the buyers of any property have to realize that they don't have to stand on tradition, and according to the National Realtors Code of Ethics, the buyer has the right to select their representative. So they should, and they should use their choices very carefully. And the misconception is that sometimes you walk into an open house and you feel stuck, that you have to use somebody that you may not have trust or confidence in, and that's a misconception. You have the right to choose, and you should.
Yeah, I think that's important that people realize that they do have that choice. And like you said, with everything, it comes down to, choosing what's best for you. So it's kind of a hypothetical question, and it's interesting to see, how you would counsel somebody else. So let's say you get a call from a family member, let's say down here in Florida, and they say, hey, Barry, it's time. I'm going to move out there. I want to be closer to you and your kids and the grandkids and everything. What would you counsel them? What would the best advice you'd give them for selecting an agent that could best serve their needs? Obviously, you may have connections, you may know people, but in general, what are the kind of things that somebody should look for to find an agent that you think could best fit their needs?
Well, relationship is extremely important, Keith, and the relationship between the buyer, my family member, or my referral, who I treat just as if they were family members. It has to be greeted in the same way that I would greet that business. That I have a responsibility. So they have to find somebody who accepts the responsibility of serving them. Now, it doesn't mean that you can be irresponsible about your demands for service. Some people call at 10 o'clock at night. That's unreasonable. That's unrealistic, and it's inappropriate. Some people expect that an agent is going to live 24/7 in the real estate business, and if I call, by golly, they need to answer, and that's also inappropriate, and it's unrealistic, and it's demeaning. So you need to find somebody who shares a commonality of values. But, with the internet, you can find a whole lot about people, even brand spanking new agents. You can find out what they've done in the past and whether they've been servant-hearted or whether they've just been money beasts. So you can find a lot about people before you ever spend much time with them face-to-face. But the conversation you have to have a commonality, a sense of mutual respect. And if there is a mutual respect, then the job can be done. If you're communicating honestly about your needs, then they can fulfill those needs honestly.
Yeah, I think you pointed out some pretty important for people to pay attention to is that obviously with this day and age of everything being connected, with everybody having profiles from Facebook to Twitter to LinkedIn, I think you can do a pretty good search and expose people, like you said, if their nature isn't to potentially serve your best needs, or at least do some research and get some general idea of the kind of people that you could be working with, as well as maybe looking at referrals and testimonials and things like that could help form a better understanding of the kind of person that you're going to deal with.
Well, sure, and past that, there are some people who are neighborhood specialists, and if that's the neighborhood you want, then they're probably going to be able to help you. There are some people who are client specialists, and that's more like me. I'm much less concerned with the property. I'm almost entirely concerned with the need. If the property is just a vehicle to fulfill someone's need. So if you're looking at somebody who sees your need and is listening to you, you sometimes have to tell them, okay, this particular property, it may not actually serve you because of this and this and this, but let's look at the broader perspective. This is what you said is your need. Let's look to fulfill that. Well, then it's less of a property question and more of a needs fulfillment question. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think. No, absolutely, and I think that it's really we've done. I've interviewed quite a few different real estate specialists on this show, and it's interesting that the take that we get that we get a lot of people to talk about serving others and their needs and stuff, but I've never heard anybody go to the extent that you have, which I think it's refreshing, and it's you should be commended for it. And I know you don't want credit for that because it's just the way you do it, but it does mean a lot that you see people like yourself out there that are building your business and having your success based upon taking care of other people's needs and taking the time to not just focus on the house or the dollar, but to really focus on the person as an individual or as a couple, and really understanding what do you need, what is the core need, how can we fulfill that need, and then going out and trying to fulfill that need with the abilities that you've been given. So I'm really, I appreciate you taking the time, obviously, and I appreciate that you conduct your business in that manner.
And having said that, I have a tremendous amount of fun because there's an awful lot of fun to be had while you're working. If you do what you love, it's just so much easier.
Well, absolutely, and to get the satisfaction too of knowing that you help fulfill somebody else's need, and that they're now satisfied and they can continue on. And I think it's kind of the, the perpetual machine of giving and helping, and that that's going to manifest other people that want to do the same for other people because of the positive experience that they had with you. So I think that's great.
Well, I've always found that what goes around comes around.
Absolutely, I believe 100% in that. Definitely. And so now, if somebody wants to learn more about you or your company, what's the best way that they can find out more about Barry Burnett and to get in contact with you?
Well, I'm delighted that you asked that question, Keith, but I'm just a little guy. What everybody needs to do is a personal needs assessment and find somebody in their bailiwick, in their heart of hearts that can fulfill their needs. If they want to reach me, I'm at www.barryburnett.net. That's my website, and it's an easy one. But there are an awful lot of folks around the country just with far greater skills and far greater desires and endeavors, and probably a whole lot closer to them. It doesn't mean I can't serve them in multiple states or around the world. I've got a magnificent 9,500 square foot villa that I'm going to be putting on the market next week in just south of Milano, in Italy, in the town of Lodi. So if you have a desire for that, then come on, it's spectacular. But as far as what your needs are, there are a lot of people who can fulfill them. You just have to be responsible to yourself to take the time to find the people who are interested in your needs above their own.
Excellent advice. And I just want to take this time to kind of wrap things up and thank our special guest, Barry Burnett, today. And if anybody's interested in learning more about Barry, like he said, obviously focus on someone that can help your needs. But if you want to learn more about Barry, you can go to barryburnett.net. There will also be a link below this interview that you'll be able to click as well as any contact information about Barry. So, Barry, thank you again for taking time to be on the show, and thank you everybody for listening. We certainly appreciate you coming and supporting the show, and we'll talk to you guys all again on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.